It's in 2027 or 2028. And then the filing asks us to categorize the projects as new builds, upgrades, or rebuilds. Those categories are defined here. For new builds, we have greenfields or expansions of existing infrastructure. If we have to get new real estate, pretty much we're calling it a new build. Upgrades are increasing capacity of existing infrastructure, and then rebuilds are like for like replacement. So that's how we've categorized the projects here. Just to highlight that scopes and timelines may change over time. These projects typically take 3 to 4 years to execute. So there's a lot of changes on prioritization, project interdependencies, outage availability. All of those can impact when we're planning to put a project in service, or even the cost of those projects. And I didn't mention, but feel free to stop me with questions at any time.
All right, thank you.
Katie, this is Dwight Keene. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Let's go back to that first slide.
Yep.
Yes, the second bullet point. What's the time horizon for that? Over 15 million in transmission investment. Is that historic or perspective?
Per project included. So if the project has 15 million in transmission investment in total for that project scheduled, then it's included in this list.
Okay, so if I'm sorry, a little slow this morning, too early maybe.
That's okay.
So if the project totals 15 million or more, it's included within the ambit of transmission delivery charges if it's a transmission investment. Is that correct?
If it's more than 15 million in transmission investment for the life of the project, we're including it in this filing if it meets the other criteria.
Okay.
Yes, that was, if I can just clarify, I believe that was the amount in statute that was the threshold for this presentation, if that's helpful.
Okay. It is. Thank you.
All right. So for the first project, as I said, these are all in Kansas Central. The first project is a 115 kV new substation and two 115 kV lines to that substation. TFR investments around $54 million. It's within our Lawrence division. This is greenfield lines and substations, all new. So there's no vintage of replaced facilities. It's all greenfield. And then this is infrastructure, looped infrastructure to serve new load in the area. So these are looped lines and substations, and then we'll be adding additional infrastructure at the substation to serve new load. The next project is a new build upgrade because we are getting some additional real estate for this. It's a replacement of a 69 to 13.2 substation, and then rebuild of existing 69 kV lines. It's almost $23 million in our Parsons division. As I said, it's a new build because we are acquiring new right of way for the lines. The conductor on the lines is originally from 1955. We have a transformer and breakers in the substation from 1964. So we're rebuilding the substation. We're rebuilding 6 miles of 69 kV line, and then a separate 1.7 miles of a different line. The projects were identified due to age and condition, but we're also seeing overloads in our zonal planning process. And just to note, we did receive an NTC for these projects. So typically if we receive an NTC, the statute says we don't have to include them in the filing. But we received the NTC and this had already been included in the filing. So just wanted to make that note. NTC is notification to construct from Southwest Power. Okay. I got a thumbs up from Chair French, so. A few pictures.
We speak transmission acronyms.
Okay. I sometimes get carried away, so I want to make sure. Um, have a few pictures of the condition of this. The existing substation is in a floodplain. So you can see there's a little bit of water in the substation. Kind of need a boat to get in there and work on things in that condition. On the left-hand side, you can see on the cross arm, you can see light through that. So you can see it's pretty rotted, pretty well rotted through. And then upper right, we have a woodpecker hole that a squirrel has actually taken residence in that woodpecker hole. So we've got some damage to the poles. It's time to replace them. So the next project is,
Katie, if we could go
yep,
back, I
yep,
believe you said that was a Parsons substation. Is that correct?
yes.
Is that serving the industrial park or is that unrelated to that area?
I do not believe it is,
Okay.
but I can't 100% say.
It's all connected.
It is all connected.
Yeah.
I believe it's a different substation that serves the industry.
Okay.
You're correct, Katie. Yeah, it's connected on the distribution, but this is not the primary feed for that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. Our next two projects are related. They're both in our Manhattan division. This is a 115 kV new line and new substation, all greenfield, new build, line and substation, therefore no replaced facilities. This provides additional capacity for load growth in the area and allows transfer of the load from one of the existing substations that's reaching its peak to this new substation. This project, the next project we're going to talk about is actually reliant on this project, so we wouldn't be able to do that one without this one. So they are interrelated. We're working on them both kind of simultaneously. So this is also a 115 kV new line and 115 12 kV new substation. Some of the load in the area is currently served at 34 kV and that's getting maxed out. In certain contingency situations, we have to have a local city run their generation to prevent overloads on the existing infrastructure. So after this project is done, we'll have sufficient capacity on the lines to be able to serve that load without that having to happen.
A couple of questions about the investments in this area. That was an interesting piece about them running local generation, which is obviously more expensive and not ideal. How do you, I don't know if we've got the right people on to tell me, but do you know how often you are asking them to run that? It's not behind the meter generation, but behind your connection generation.
Yeah. I don't have that information. We can get it.
Chair French, it's fairly rare, but it did happen on last Monday.
Yeah.
So during the temperatures north of 100 degrees, we had some equipment damage. We had asked the customer to run their generation, but it's very uncommon. But I will tell you their current feed is inadequate for, quite frankly, I would say their current load. And, that's just going to get worse over time. So a 115 kV feed into this area will certainly shore up their reliability needs and make the likelihood of running their generation in the future significantly less.
That leads into my other question. It's just curiosity. If you know, is this just organic residential and small commercial growth? Are there any, specific other large growth that this would be serving? Just any context you have on growth in that area.
Is mostly organic residential load growth. So not really large stepwise load additions, but just growth in the area that we've seen.
Thank you.
The next project is a 115 kV new ring bus substation in our Shawnee division. It's $16 million in TFR investment. Our current assets there. We have a couple station power transformers that are from 1976 and 86. We have 115 kV switches from the 80s. So all of that infrastructure will be replaced. We're rebuilding the substation due to asset condition, but some of the substation equipment are limiting on facilities that are SPP flow gates. So SPP is seeing high flows through this area. SPP did issue us an NTC for a couple of the line terminals, but not the entire substation rebuild. So this TFR investment number that we've included here actually includes that NTC work. We didn't break it out into NTC and non-NTC for these purposes, but some of that will be recovered through the SPP cost allocation. Couple pictures here of the substation. You can see the lattice bus work. These switches that are on the left are the ones that are from the 80s that are being replaced past their useful life. It's somewhat difficult to see on the right-hand side, but the transformer in the back is leaking oil. So that transformer needs to be replaced. So just age condition issues within the substation that are leading us to rebuild. That's all of the new projects for the 2026 filing. These are updates from projects that were included in previous filings. I'll say the top project, the substation rebuild 69 to 12 kV, that was previously included in 2023's filing and then wasn't included in 24-25. We had pushed out the in-service date further, so it didn't meet the criteria to include in 24-25. It's now come back into the next 2 years. So we've included it this year. Again, most of the cost of these have gone up due to receiving more detailed estimates. A lot of times as you go along, you're getting more detailed estimates. They're and over time, inflationary pressures mean that the costs of these are going up.
That I had a question written down. I'm glad you got to this slide because the first project kind of fits with my question, and the comment about inflation definitely fits with all of them. A lot of these aren't just lines; they're new substation rebuild, transformer switches. We all read the news about how difficult that supply chain has become. And I see it in this first project that it is being impacted by that. Would you say for the most part with these projects, you've got enough of those materials in stock, or are you facing supply chain issues with pretty much every project you try to complete? And then kind of second part to that, are we still procuring everything from your traditional suppliers, I assume mostly in Asia, or are you guys exploring new supply chain options? Are there any new supply chain options emerging, I guess is the question. So yeah, what difficulties have you seen in supply chain for those components, and what are you doing to have we developed any more flexibility for new channels to procure?
Yeah, Katie, I'll handle that unless
I
Andy
was
wants to.
gonna say
I'll
either Steve
start
or Andy's
and
gonna handle that.
Andy can mop up behind me a little bit. I would say this started maybe 3, potentially 4 years ago, Chair French, where it was becoming very apparent that the difficulty on acquiring the materials that we were going to need at the time we were going to need them was going to become more difficult. It was also apparent that the amount of work we were likely to do in the future was going to be much different than the work we were going to do in the past. So we started on a little bit of a different strategy and saying, what are the impediments to delivering what will be needed at the time it's needed, or what is needed at the time it's needed? And materials were, I think, the greatest impediment. So we changed our inventory stocking levels a little bit. We got a little bit more aggressive in having things here and on the ground and making sure that we were not missing our in-service dates for lack of having the materials we needed. We also here, I would say about 4 years ago, started vetting new suppliers. So any single transformer manufacturer, poles, or whatever it might be, we didn't want to find ourselves in a place where we had a single supplier for any major significant piece of material. So we added at least one additional manufacturer supplier for the things that we do that are most critical.
Great. That is exactly the information I was looking for. It's a challenge. I mean, you've got the challenge of affordability and the cost pressures, but none of that even matters if you can't procure what you need. So that's always a concern and a growing concern. How would you, some of this is probably proprietary and you don't want to reveal too much, but how would you judge your inventory levels today on critical components like some of these transmission level transformers?
Yeah, and I think you nailed it, right? I mean, trying to find that really defendable balance between, having what you need when you need it and affordability. I feel really comfortable with our current stocking levels. I think for somebody that's in charge of the reliability of the transmission system, feels more comfortable for me. But again, it's finding that right balance. I think for us and the things that are the most critical in making sure that our grid is resilient, reliable, I feel confident that we're in a good spot. You could always make the argument that we should have more inventory. Certainly people could make the argument we should have less. But for me, I feel like, if asked to defend how we're approaching, our reliability of our system, I feel like we're on solid footings and able to do that.
That's good. I'm going to guess you don't have a bunch of step down 765 to 345 equipment just laying around, right?
No, and if we were wanting to acquire any of those, we wouldn't be talking about it on this call for some time.
Okay. I don't know if this is the last slide, but Katie, if there's no more questions, you can continue.
Yep, that's it.
Question slide. All right. Well, I will open it up for, I sort of dominated questions. So if I know staff would like to say some words at the end, but before we do that, any questions from other commissioners, staff, or Curb?
Yes, if I could, Katie, Dwight Keene. If we could take down the background of the screen share. Is that possible? There we go. Thank you. Adjust this for me. Okay, great. And Steve, I could open this up to you, whomever it is that feels comfortable answering these questions. Let me go up to some 30,000 feet questions. Let's get some perspective on what's the domain that we're really talking about here. To what extent are the costs or investments that are considered as transmission and delivery charges either within or beyond the discretion of Evergy?
I'll take a stab at this, although I'm not exactly sure I'm understanding the question, commissioners. Are you asking what projects are we constructing and or participating in that are dictated to us by the Southwest Power Pool and not decisions that we are making on our own accord?
That's exactly what I meant.
We're getting to know each other fairly well after all these years.
Yes. Your clairvoyance was good this morning, Steve. Yes, I'm concerned about. I know there are certain costs that are going to flow through to ratepayers in the form of transmission delivery charges, as you allude to, which are not, shall we say, Evergy generated per se. And so that's what I'm asking is. If we look at the totality of the TDCs, to what extent are those mandated by basically the Southwest Power Pool, and to what extent are they discretionary with the Evergy?
Yeah, so I'll be real honest about our ability to really, dig into this and give you a really definite answer that's somewhat kind of right at the decimal point. But I will tell you this, I did look at this here maybe about a year ago about how many dollars we were receiving from entities outside our own jurisdictions for projects that we were constructing, and then what we were contributing to projects that are not in our jurisdictions that are part of the Southwest Power Pool, kind of the highway byway methodology of cost allocation and SPP. And I would say it was pretty close to being equal. Now, again, that's a little bit dated, but at that point, when we did a little bit of analysis on it, we felt like the costs that we were incurring for infrastructure that wasn't in Kansas and for us and/or Missouri, and then the costs that we were settling in the other 13 states in the Southwest Power Pool that were in our jurisdictions, it was a fair spread of dollars.
Roughly 50%.
I would say at the time we looked at it, it was roughly 50%. If we were real honest, we were probably a little bit better off than we otherwise would have been if we hadn't had cost allocation methodology in Southwest Power Pool.
Is that cost methodology within the Southwest Power Pool under review? The historic reference points.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to get me over the end of my skis here just a little bit, but yeah, there's a group at the Southwest Power Pool who is, investigating the current cost methodology allocation at the Southwest Power Pool with what is anticipated to happen in the future, and is, kind of, I would say, in the first stages of happening now. It's reevaluating, is the cost allocation methodology that we currently have in the pool the right one for the times. I think the one that we're currently in and that we've had for, quite frankly, decades has worked well up to this point. So that there is there's a change in how the grid's likely to operate in the future, and a reassessment of the cost allocation is underway. And, at the end of that, it will be determined, are the folks that are being allocated the costs in line with the folks that are receiving the benefit, and that is currently being assessed at the pool level.
I appreciate that. That's really beyond the purview of what we're doing this morning. I'm not going to pursue that any further. It's not necessary, but we'll just temporarily let you off the hook. How about that?
I don't anticipate this line of questioning to go away anytime soon. So I appreciate kind of just letting me dip my toe in the water on that a little bit.
I think your suspicions will be realized. Let me, again, in kind of a holistic way, which will give you, I think, a pretty good view into why it is that I asked that first question. Can you tell me what percentage of Evergy's revenues are derived from transmission delivery charges?
I don't know if I can answer that. I do know that I can't answer that question, but I don't know if we've got anybody on the call. I doubt it that could provide that number.
How could we get an answer to that?
I mean, I really feel like our regulatory department can provide that answer to you. I believe we could probably do it in fairly short order.
I would appreciate that. I think it's important. I didn't mean to. If I stepped over your statement, I didn't mean to. Steve, had you finished your thought?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Because the related question to that, which is really significant to me, is what percentage of ratepayer bills are transmission delivery charges? If in the basket of TDCs, you have roughly 50%, and acknowledging that that's somewhat historic but still recent, 50% of those are beyond the purview of Evergy, and there are pass-throughs required by the Southwest Power Pool. We're talking about significant impact on ratepayer bills. I'm adding my own editorial comment here, that maybe for benefits derived by others far distant from Kansas within the Southwest Power Pool, for which our ratepayers don't derive benefit. So that's the essence of why I'm concerned and why I'm asking the question is it's for perspective, if you follow me.
Yeah, I definitely follow you. I mean, I think that the costs are very transparent, right? We talk about them in these workshops. We have a technical conference. We talk about them there. We generally have a lot of conversations with staff about what we're doing from a transmission perspective, and the costs are easy to quantify. What's more difficult to quantify is the benefit you receive from having the transmission investment, and that I think is why it's hard for generally a lot of folks to say, is it worth it or not? It's hard to understand what you would have paid in fuel absent the transmission investment, and I think that's something that we quite frankly need to get a little bit better handle on. So when we're having these conversations, we can say with more confidence, is it worth it or not?
I appreciate that response. I think uh, I shouldn't have allowed my question to go on as long as it did because there was too much editorial comment in that. So I'm going to re-ask the question without the editorial comment. To what extent, or to what is the percentage of total ratepayer bills that are basically related to transmission delivery charges?
Yeah, again, I don't know the answer to that. Again, we can definitely get our finance folks and our regulatory folks involved, and that is a very clear and precise number that we can definitely provide to you.
I'd appreciate that. I think it's really, if for perspective, it's really quite consequential, and I appreciate your help in trying to ascertain what the answers are. Thank you.
You're most welcome.
All right. Okay, I see Mr. Astrab has his hand raised. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to put my hand down first. Thank you, Katie, Andrew, Steve, for the presentation and the information. I think it's very valuable. These workshops happen this way, and it's a good way for us to have a discussion like this. I want to turn back to the project that Chair French was talking about in that Manhattan regarding the organic population growth that you referenced earlier. With these projects, how is it, I guess, measured in terms of the economics of the project? That is, when you're basing off of load growth, is there some sort of like formula or data that you utilize to measure this load growth relative to the revenue you'll be recovering over that period of time, reflecting this decision to make a project choice, or how is that determined, or if at all?
We're looking at overloads in this case. It's a reliability driven project. So we're not looking at the economics or the revenue growth compared to what we're spending on the projects. We wouldn't be able to serve the load without the projects existing.
Okay, that's what I see. So it's kind of, but for this project, we'd have these issues. Is that how it's determined? And so in terms of that, I guess, consideration of reliability, I assume that load growth was factored into that, right? More people puts more stress on the grid. Was there any consideration given to industrial, commercial, or even like the large load growth potential in that area for this project as well? Or is that going to be a separate process perhaps?
So we plan based on projected load growth. It's impossible to know where the spot loads or the large loads are coming in. So we don't necessarily pre-plan for that, although this would give an opportunity. We don't plan exactly to what we expect the load to be. So there is some growth opportunity. Obviously, we don't want to have to rebuild something immediately after it's rebuilt because it's been rebuilt because load grows faster than we expected. But we're not planning for 500 megawatt load growth in every single project that we do. So we would do an evaluation if a large load were wanting to locate somewhere. We would do that evaluation separately.
Okay, and so as far as you know, a lot of these projects in this presentation today, they were project typed as new build, and there were some references regarding load growth in those, but it wasn't specific to whether it was residential, organic growth, or large load growth as well. And so I was kind of curious along those lines, in terms of your point about a separate review, is there a possibility that these reviews between what you're talking about and these reliability projects and these large load growth projects and the geographical locations, is there any sort of overlap in that review, or is it simply a matter of if your team reviews a project for a certain area, but there may not be any evidence of any 500 gigawatt load in that area as well? Do you have any information you provide on that front as far as any of these projects? Are they all devoid of that data, or is that you didn't consider that data even though it existed? Does that make sense? I may have kind of convoluted it there.
I think you lost me along the way there. When
I could break it down. I'm sorry. So a lot of these project types are new builds. So can you tell us whether or not any of these projects are incorporating any consideration of large load growth as a reliability concern for why those projects were selected? Or are you telling us that there are no indications that there will be load growth in those areas related to those projects? And this is all related to the discussions that there's a large pipeline of large load projects coming down. So I didn't know how there's any sort of maybe coordination between those, I guess, plans.
we have,
Joseph,
sorry,
Katie,
yeah,
I
go
think I
ahead,
can
Steve.
probably
Yeah.
hit this one in the Manhattan division. Today, the area is fed by a radial 34.5 kV line. Here, several years ago, a manufacturing facility was considering locating in this part of our service territory. We did not have the incremental capacity to serve them, and the time it would have taken us to serve them was beyond their needs. So they located, I believe, somewhere else. So that being the case, so we're sitting here at a place where we're already at our maximum ability to serve for what is already there. It's, I would say, very, very close to being inadequate and cannot accommodate any new jobs in the area. So we went to the drawing board and we said, okay, what can we do here? What's the art of the possible? And we're building what is a 115 kV line into this area that will accommodate, I would say, a small amount of new incremental load, maybe a couple hundred megawatts. We also have flexibility in the plan where we could bring in a secondary feed into this area from the south. We chose not to do that at the moment because it's just way more capacity than is currently needed. But if someone were to locate in this part of our service territory and it was beyond what the new 115 kV feed could provide to them, we could bring in a secondary feed from, quite frankly, south of I-70. So it's kind of like we're going to build in an incremental space for whomever might show up here in the short term, but are prepared and I think well positioned to provide significantly more capacity in that area with a single new line in the future. So the new substation that's getting built will have a terminal for a new line that we could build in the future, although the line's not part of the current plan.
Okay, thank you, Steve. I appreciate the context. And I think Katie, you were also going to respond to, or that he kind of covered it there.
Yeah, he covered it. Yeah, to his point, we're right sizing for what we currently can predict, with trying to build in flexibility for what may happen in the future.
Okay, but I appreciate that. But as far as that Manhattan project goes, it sounds like that was strictly based on organic, residential, industrial current load growth there. But as far as the other projects, can we gain other details about those as well, as terms of what load growth was anticipated as far as accounting for?
The
Go ahead,
Steve-
Katie.
Oh.
This is Andy. I just got one comment here for you, Joseph, that may answer if I'm hearing your question correctly. One example here was, I think it was the first project in the Lawrence diffusion. Katie said we got an NTC for that, but it was still in the slide deck. A lot of these large load customers end up at the Southwest Power Pool, and we get NTCs for them. So you are not seeing, the statutory requirement here, that what was laid out in the statute was not to include those in this presentation. So I think we might be overlapping a couple different things here. And so a lot of these projects are not driven by the large load that Katie presented today because those end up with NTCs. So,
Oh, I see. So is that a matter of course typically, since they're so large, they're automatically going to be NTC type things, or is there a scenario where Evergy can, I guess, elect to build or take on a project because of a large load customer coming into somewhere?
Yeah, I will say that first project that we had listed that is driven by large load. Um, and but the differentiation is it is still looped transmission flow. So it provides reliability to the area, additional reliability to the area, but it does help serve that load as well. Typically what is covered by SPP NTCs associated with large loads is network upgrades that are driven by the addition of the load and changing flows on the transmission system due to that. So we receive NTCs for those. We did not receive NTCs for the first project on the list today.
Okay, thank you. If I could follow up too with a really quick question. In terms of these projects that you're putting, obviously it's new stuff, or at least as new as you could get, right? And understandably, there are supply constraints and things like that. But in terms of like state of the art stuff you're putting in, how far can you say that this stuff is considering all the newest type of technologies, efficiency technologies, advanced transmission technologies, those kind of things? I know there's additional costs with that, but can you tell us a little bit how much of maybe these projects are incorporating some of this state of the art technology to get extra, performance and efficiencies from the equipment? Or is that just something that you can add on later, kind of like an accessory?
yeah, I can give you an answer there, Joseph. Yeah, we're constantly considering that. We are, yeah, updating some of our specifications and standards right now to address some of those, newer types of equipment that may have higher ampacity when we specifically talk transmission. Yes, we're currently investigating, composite core conductor and other transmission technologies that will allow increased amperage flows. We haven't specifically installed conductor on our system right now, but we are designing a project right now within the Evergy footprint that will use, composite or a better conductor, newer conductor technology, I will say. So on that. So yeah, it's something our engineering team is continually evaluating. With some of those newer technologies, we don't necessarily want to be the first adopters. We want to be fast followers, but we want to make sure they're proven and reliable before we jump on board with them. So.
Great. Thank you. I think that's all I have for now. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Astrab. Are there any additional questions by commissioners, staff, or Curb before I turn it? Oh, I do see Mr. Ives has gone off mute, and I understand it looks like some scrambling behind the scenes must have happened after Commissioner Keen asked his question. And Commissioner Keen, let me know if I get this right. I think there were a couple elements you asked, and one was just what's the total percent of annual revenue that flows from the TDC, and the other was what is the percentage share of a typical customer bill that the TDC accounts for. And I think I don't know if Mr. Ives has answers to all of those, but I think he may have answers to some of that. So, and you can correct me if I didn't get those wrong or didn't get those right. But I'll turn it to either of you. If Commissioner Keen, does that need any clarification, or was that generally the gist?
No, generally that's pretty good, but it's great to see you this morning, Darren, and it's just the beginning of a series of maybe 100 questions to follow. But please start with those two if you would. I was kidding.
Uh-oh, Mr. Ives, I see you are not muted, but you may be double muted somehow. I don't know if you've got we are not hearing you.
How about now?
Yes, we've got you now.
All right, I was double muted, so my apologies for not being on the Zoom this morning. I was trying to take advantage of your YouTube channel, but it's hard to respond when you're on the YouTube channel. So appreciate the questions. I think a couple things I'd point out. There's a fair amount of difference in TDC impact between our two jurisdictions. Whether we generally talk about TDC in light of the Kansas Central jurisdiction, but we certainly also have TDC at the Kansas Metro jurisdiction. But with the density of our loads in the metro area, we don't have near the transmission build or cost profile that we do in Central. So I'll give you both of them. On the Central side, we're about 18.5% of our expected revenues come from the TDC. And that's kind of based on where we ended up at the end of our 25 case. When we did revenue analysis. Can you hear me? It looked like I
Yes.
tried to mute.
You dropped off for just a second, but you're back now.
Something's trying to mute me repeatedly here. I'm wondering if it's somebody on my team, but we'll continue on here. And as far as percentage of bill, it's very similar when you look at percentage of a residential bill that is impacted by the TDC. It's a little over 18%, so very close to that 18.5 of the revenue expectation, system wide. On the metro side, our numbers are closer to 8%. From a TDC revenue, TDC residential bill impact. So just again, kind of shows the difference in the density of our loads, per mile of transmission that we serve under. Kind of addressing that difference, and we'll just reiterate what Steve said. I mean, it's easy to isolate the cost of transmission when we talk about the cost coming from SPP approved charges. The other side is much more difficult to evaluate, and that's the overall fuel savings and the other bill components that derive the benefits from participation in SPP. So I don't want to end by isolating just on the cost side, because what Steve said is true. We've also benefited from revenues on NTC projects that we've built, and we certainly benefit substantially as customers in Kansas from fuel and revenue, or fuel and energy benefits of being on the system, and don't want to lose that moment to talk about that. We need to look in total when we think about the impacts of the transmission investments.
I appreciate the granularity of that, Darren. And let me kind of follow it with the first question I was asking of Katie and Steve, and realizing all of the nuances that go into this, to which you've made reference, certainly, the benefits as well as the costs. I get that too, but I think probably the conservative nature that resides within me focuses more on the cost side, because that has a tremendous impact. So going back to the first question I asked, if you were to look at the TDCs, I mean, to what extent, Steve gave it roughly a 50% answer that I think was a bit historic, recent but historic, about what percentage of these were within the purview of Evergy's discretion and which were not. You have an update on that, or a different thought on that?
Yeah, so I think I think Steve answered the part of that question well, on the fact that our participation in SPP and revenues collected on lines that have been regionally allocated as has probably, equaled or, at some level, a little bit exceeded the amounts that we've paid for lines and other parts of the footprint. So I think that goes back to the comment that historically, since we've kind of entered the the highway byway phase and the cost allocation approach that's been in effect, it has done a pretty reasonable job of looking at regional projects and the regional disbursement of cost and benefits. I think Steve went on to say, and you asked this question, is there more going on? And there certainly is, as we look at the potential changing character of a build out of a backbone of the SPP system. It has brought the team, the RSC and sub teams to consider whether or not we need to upgrade and modify some of our cost allocations. We actually have folks in a meeting today going through their monthly discussion on that. So the hope is
We got to wrap this up so we can go back and watch that meeting.
that's right. Yeah, the hope is we'll ultimately get a recommendation out here in the fall from that team for the RSC and ultimately the SPP to consider for cost allocation. I think if you look at our current investment profile, particularly at EKC, I would say we still are investing more dollars in our own reliability rebuild concerns on an annual basis than we are, investing in NTC sponsored projects from SPP. But as you know, there continues to be a number of projects that are advancing at SPP and more that are considered to come in future SPP filings. So I wouldn't say that relationship is expected to hold at the same level moving forward as SPP continues to focus on build out and backbone infrastructure needs of the region.
Thank you, Darren.
Maybe I could ask a follow-on, and maybe this is a comment more than a question. And I'm going to admit I'm getting a little astray from the purpose of the workshop, but this whole discussion about the costs and benefits of transmission, and frankly, I just don't think we have a lot of visibility into how the pieces all fit together: transmission, distribution, generation. And that's difficult because you've got your local planning criteria and what we're talking about today, which is sort of the local planning processes to maintain reliability on that level. And then you've got a completely separate level with an independent third party, the Southwest Power Pool, planning the higher level reliability and economic projects that you don't get to dictate. You can give input, you can give suggestions, but you don't get to select the projects. And so there's kind of lack of control there. But I mean, maybe I'm previewing something you might hear from me in upcoming IRP proceedings, but I don't believe Evergy today includes transmission in its IRP planning. There are a few utilities that do that. And I do wonder if it would be helpful to have some element of connectivity to transmission planning within the IRP, because as you said, it impacts things like location of generation and fuel savings. And if there were a way to get a more holistic picture of the costs and benefits of all these different options together on an integrated basis, gosh, it seems really complex. I can't even really imagine how that would work in my head. Luckily, it's not my job to come up with it. There's lots of good consultants out there. Yeah, I do wonder, because we're being asked to make all these choices and make large investments on every single one of those levels. I wonder if it would be possible to have more connectivity maybe within the IRP process, to bring all of those elements together. So I will open it for a response if you wish. I'm mostly just thinking out loud, but I think, Commissioner Keene had some good questions there. And then Darren, your responses, your and Steve's responses prompted that thought from me, that it would be good to look at this on a more integrated level, with the other investments we're making. So I'll stop there. Respond if you wish. Tell me I'm wrong, or we can leave that conversation for a future workshop.
Yeah, I won't go too deep for some of the same reasons that you mentioned. I might get over my skis pretty quickly on the complexity and some of the work. I mean, I think certainly continue to think about how we evaluate overall system cost responsibility and benefit continues to be something that we look at and we plan and we think about across a number of fronts. And maybe I just end with, the difficulty really is at some point from a benefit standpoint, you end up proving the hypothetical, right? Or trying to prove the hypothetical. What would our gen or fuel costs been had we not had access through the SPP to the other resources that our customers are able to benefit from by being a part of it? So, you're playing a little bit of the hypothetical guessing game of what the future would have looked like if we were back in the olden days, standalone, serving source to sink for ourselves. And we're just so many years removed from that now. Really difficult to predict what we would have had to build and what we would have had to done to meet those needs and meet them in the same way that a 14 state region can help us meet him today. So um, probably probably more dialogue to have on that for sure, Chair, and think about how we can continue to support the thought process for the commission on both and the costs and the benefit side moving forward.
Yeah, I just know, I talked to our staff about this a lot, and gosh, I've been thinking about it for definitely over 10 years. You see these portfolios come out, and obviously they're bigger now, but there's the projected cost benefit numbers, but and that's what we can share. But it would be really nice to have an empirical, here's where our fuel savings are compared to the amount that we're asking customers to pay on a monthly bill. So, and that's even a little different than the IRP, where you're still trying to predict the future. But yeah, I just, to the extent we can think about transmission on a little more integrated basis with the state jurisdictional investments, I mean, I think that would be helpful for us to understand why we're making the decisions we are, or why we're okay with the decisions that are being made that we don't get a vote on. So, okay, well, I will leave it there. Any additional questions from staff, commissioners, Curb, before Chad, I will turn it to you for a brief summarizing statement. All right. Seeing no more questions, Chad, I'll turn it to you.
Okay, staff held its compliance filing with the technical conference on June 9th, 2026. Generally, we end up putting the compliance filing and tying that to Evergy's TDC filings. So they would be the R&R that we would produce would cover both the 26260 docket up for 8KM and the 26258 docket. And we summarize those directly in staff's report and recommendations. And in addition, I mean, I did a little bit of additional research on the most recent TDC for EKC. And, to Commissioner Keene's question, it looks like of the total zonal ATRR that's applied to the EKC retail customers, About 312 million is situated with actual zonal ATRR investment, where there's an additional 98.1 million that is broken out between the zonal ATRR for NTC projects, the base plan funded amounts, and then the region-wide allocation. And so at a whole level, if you look at EKC's overall costs that retail consumers are picking up, it's about 76.2% of the total investment is related to Evergy Central Zonal ATRR investment.
And when you say
So
zonal, those are like the local projects that we're talking about today, right, Chad?
yes. And that was just to provide a little bit more context to Commissioner Keene's question. And we can obviously the TDC filings provide the data that summarizes this detail, but we can even try to expand staff's R&R a bit to maybe break down those costs better in the report and recommendations that we would file in the 26-260 docket and 26-258 docket.
Thank you for that offer, Chad. I think that would be helpful. It would add some granularity to it. I appreciate your suggestion.
Yeah, I would appreciate that too, Chad. I mean, in our conversations here and at the legislature, I mean, I know we've talked about the local transmission. A few years ago, I think we would have said it was the overwhelming majority of the TDC. Not the SPP directed portion or planned portion is not. It was a relatively small part of the TDC in past years, but I think 25% represents a pretty good growth in that, and I think at least my understanding from the conversations is we do expect those percentage to maybe not equalize, but move toward they're going to converge. The SPP planned portion is going to get larger on a percentage basis. And I'm seeing nodding, so I don't think I'm saying anything totally out of school. But yeah, if that, even if just at a general level, if that kind of information can be in staff's reports in the future, I do think that context is helpful to us and to policymakers to understand, just where the cost is flowing from. So. Okay, Chad, did you have anything else for us before we conclude?
No, we'll go ahead and kind of include an expanded kind of R&R that'll detail some of that data out. If we have any questions, we'll follow up with Evergy directly.
Very good. And Evergy, we thank you for your presentation. Any concluding remarks that anyone would like to make, or have we covered everything? Darren's
I
trying
think
to
we're
make
good, Chair.
concluding remarks, but he's double muted again.
Oh, double muted again. The team says I'm should be talking less. But I just want to say thanks for the time and the questions from the commission today. Certainly a big part of our work and our system reliability is our transmission work. So appreciate Katie and the team and Andy and all the work that they did, and the work that staff does. Going through and evaluating our TDC and our work in this area.
Thank you, Darren. Thank you, Katie, Steve, Andy, for the presentation and for answering our questions. All right, if there is nothing more, we will conclude this workshop. We thank you all for your time, and we'll see you next year.